Hello, everyone. Welcome to the We Shape podcast.
Hello today.
It's just Nina and I today.
I know, Girls' Day.
Different energy.
It's so mellow in here.
Oh my gosh. Well, Tyler went on a camping trip with our older daughter. Mm-hmm. And both of them have really incredible minds and brains that also accompany
So much energy.
Ton of energy. And so I am trying to just kind of embrace a week of like different energy. Yeah. Not good or bad, but just different energy.
The double Taurus in you is like really excited.
I mean, my younger one goes to bed at 7. There's going to be lots of bubble baths, reading. You know me. It's wonderful. Going down. But anyway, we have a guest today. Yes, I'm really excited. The last couple episodes I've been pulling from our rest deck, and I want to keep doing that.
Let's do it.
Let's just do it. Because it's Trisha Hershey. She is the owner of the Nap Ministry on Instagram. She has an incredible book, but she also has this incredible deck. So you want to draw today?
I did last time.
Oh, you did last time?
Yeah, it's your turn.
I'm drawn. It's just little cards that remind us that rest is okay, and I just love doing this.
Little daily reminders are always
good. Daydreaming is a form of rest.
I like that.
When was the last time you practiced daydreaming? When you are exhausted, imagination is almost impossible. Ooh, that's hard. Today, go outside, stare at the sky, and breathe. Follow your mind wherever it leads you. During a daydream, you tap into a deep imagination space. You can dream yourself free. Rest.
I love that.
Albert Einstein has a good quote about imagination. He says something about like imagination is the most powerful tool or something like it. Like that's, I mean, and we always are, I think we're as children, we are taught to come out of that imagination space. So what a cool reminder. And I love that we're promoting so much rest through We Shape.
We should have an episode where we just nap the whole time.
Yeah. Even though we're a fitness company, I'm like, people need rest. It's like, I know that's counterintuitive to what we're used to hearing, especially in the fitness industry, but we're here to remind you to rest. Rest is okay. Listen to your body. The entire purpose of We Shape's product is to help you connect with your body. It's not to push you to exhaustion. So here is your gentle reminder that you're allowed to listen to your body. But we're going to go into our guest today. Nina, I'm going to pass the computer over so you can read her bio. I'm really excited about this one. I know when people come into We Shape, they are always like, okay, what do I do about my diet? I'm like, oh, okay. We don't do diets, but we can provide educational resources through the podcast to have a different perspective on our relationship with food. So we're going to get into that again today. Absolutely. I feel like we have a lot of intuitive eating practitioners on, people who are preaching food freedom. And I like to continue to bring these guests on because I feel like sometimes we have to hear it in a different way so many times before it's like each time it clicks in a different way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think our journeys, if you really look back on like the kind of disordered habits we had for so much of our lives, it probably took like 15 years to get to where we are today. Like, no joke, 15 years of trying different things and coming to a place of like, this isn't working. Yeah. I am all done. And then trying something that like felt a lot kinder to ourselves.
Yeah. So I just want to keep bringing these types of experts in because I feel like each chance is an opportunity to dissect another layer of that onion.
Heck yes.
That got us into this mess in the first place. So without further ado, if you want to read her bio, then we'll introduce her.
So today we have Jenn with us. Jenn is a non-diet registered dietitian. That is a beautiful sentence. Certified intuitive eating counselor, cat mom, and cookie dough lover. She helps women overcome binge eating, overeating, and emotional eating so that they can embody their version of food freedom. She's incredibly passionate about helping women find peace with food and their bodies because she's been through having a broken relationship with food and body image herself and knows how much those struggles can take over someone's life. Jenn is dedicated to helping guide her clients and community to leave all of the shoulds of diet culture in the past and find confidence in their own inner wisdoms to guide their eating decisions, increase their self-worth, and embody their most authentic selves. Hell yes. Hallelujah. Thank you so much for being with us today, Jenn.
Hi, Jenn.
Hi. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I'm so excited to be here, talk food freedom, smash diet culture, and allow people to do just that, step into their authentic selves, their authentic health, their authentic well-being. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, let's start, Jenn. What brought you on this journey? How did you get to where you are today? Because it sounds like you, like many of us, especially people who identify as female, have not had a level of food freedom at all in their lives. So you must have had to go through something to get where you are today. So maybe just give us a quick overview of how you got here.
Yes, I will try and give you the Spark Notes version because this could be a very long story. Really, like many of us have from a pretty young age, just having the worst body image, really wanting to change that, and being in the mindset of, oh, if I change my body, then everything will be good. Right? If I just get into this version of what I think is the perfect ideal body, then I'm going to feel confident. I'm going to feel like excited. I'm going to feel more outgoing. I'm going to feel better in my body. I'm just, like this narrative that diet culture sells us. So of course,
it will change everything.
Right? Yeah. Like just, magically change your body and you'll magically change your life. But even through all the ups and downs of dieting and getting to a smaller body from where I was, it wasn't enough. Like it was never enough in terms of whatever changes happened. But as we know, going through diets, you get into the diet cycle and you go up and down and there's a lot of fluctuations and it never really sticks anyways. So I went through all the motions, all the diets, Beach Body, 21 Day Fix, Kayla Itzein's Bikini Body Guide, like all the things you could probably think of, those, dreaded containers, that one, like, just thinking about all of it, it was a lot. It was just grasping at straws, anything that I could do to shift myself, trying to change me. It was never good enough. I ended up feeling just horrible about myself, going up and down with all the diets. I ended up in a place of binge eating. So kind of this is something that I help people with now, but going from all of those years of dieting and restriction to swinging into the other side of the diet binge cycle where I just found myself binge eating and I couldn't stop. And it felt so uncomfortable. And I remember there's like a vivid memory I have of mine that was like the breaking point of just like slumping down to the floor with like a bag of chocolate covered almonds, just crying because I'm like, why can't I stop? And I Googled like, how do I stop binge eating? And it's still like, even at that point, I still didn't know how to do it, but it was just so frustrating. And I don't want people to feel like that. So myself, obviously, to get here to where I am today, I had to turn things around. And in my obsession with diets and nutrition and things, I did actually go on to pursue more of like a healthcare role, but more from this like idea of like, oh, I just want to learn more about nutrition because if I know more about nutrition, then maybe I'll be able to be good. And I started in that journey, piece. Right? Like it's so interesting. And there's actually a lot of studies to show that a lot of folks who are studying nutrition or becoming dietitians or in that field do have these struggles themselves. And I definitely was one of those people. And until I recognized, it was actually in a yoga class where I was like, things clicked for me, where the instructor was like, we have to treat our bodies with respect and was talking about body respect. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am totally the opposite of that. I'm trying to be good and I'm trying to be healthy and I'm really disrespecting my body. And then from there, I was like, something needs to change. I learned about intuitive eating through some colleagues. And that was the path that I was like, okay, yeah, that feels like a breath of fresh air. Let me learn more about that. Let me get support there and run with that. And, after time and a lot of still ups and downs, healing my own relationship with food, of course, I went on to become a registered dietitian, a certified intuitive eating counselor myself, started my business, and, here we are. I help folks overcome those same struggles. But yeah, I've been through the roller coaster of it myself. Yeah.
And it doesn't stop either, right? Like, I mean, it's kind of an ongoing, lifelong journey, even for people, I think, in your position, right? We had a guest on a while back who said diet culture is like the ex-boyfriend that calls. And every once in a while you think like, I'm going to pick up that phone because like, maybe that'd be fun to try again. And you kind of have to just keep being like, nope, not today.
It's
for sure.
Yeah, it's a process. And I think that we all have to also understand that a lot of the messages that we have subscribed to throughout our life, we're not going to unlearn those overnight. And so, but I'd love to kind of understand what is your, when you say food freedom, what does that mean to you, Jenn? Like when people are hearing food freedom, that sounds amazing, but like, what does that really mean?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question because it can be so vague. And I think something that's important to me is that, and I even, have this in my messaging for what I do in my programs, is that I want someone to embody their version of food freedom. And that might look different for me than it does to you and other folks, right? So it could look different for everyone. But generally speaking, when we're thinking about food freedom, it's just embracing a healthy relationship with food and moving away from all of the unhealthy, I don't like those words, but that's kind of the best way we can, wrap our minds around it, behaviors with food. Or we could even say disordered eating, right? Letting go of a lot of that and moving into a place where we can feel comfortable with food, feel confident around food, feel at peace with it instead of, thinking about food all the time, obsessing about food all the time, stressing over all of our food decisions, going in this like loop-de-loop of restricting and then binging or overeating or emotionally eating. Like we're letting go of those things and coming to a place where you can just feel comfortable around food. Sometimes my clients like to describe it as feeling normal, right? Like I just want to eat normally. So it's just this place where we're letting go of all the struggle, right? And eating just feels like a lot more easeful. It's something we have to do every day, right? Like we have to
like
eat
multiple times
every day, multiple times a day. Why do we want to like make ourselves be like, I gotta like overthink every little food decision and do all these things and be perfect about it? And then you're just like on this constant stress level all the time because food is in our life. Like we need it. Our bodies need it. So why don't we foster that more positive relationship with the food that we're eating and our eating habits to find quote unquote food freedom, right? And whatever that means, it can be something along those lines and it may look a little bit different for everyone else. But I think really what's behind it is it's not really about the food. It's being able to live your life without that overshadowing everything and like stepping into that authentic you without feeling held back by stressing about food or not going to that event because you don't know what kind of food's going to be there, or you feel like people are going to judge you based on how your body looks or what food choices you're making. Just like living your life without all the struggle.
So I want to ask a question. Well, I'm curious, when your clients come to you, what is like the thing that you hear over and over and over again?
Oh, lots of things. I would say that a phrase that is the most consistent with a lot of my clients is that they feel stuck, right? They feel stuck. They're like, I know this dieting thing isn't working. It hasn't been working for however, fill in the blank, many years I've been doing it. It's not working, but I don't know what to do otherwise. Like letting myself have all the foods and, this idea of that people have in their head of food freedom or intuitive eating, like letting myself do that feels terrifying. And even when I've tried to eat intuitively in the past, I just overdo it. And now I'm just stuck. I'm stuck. I don't know how to feel normal around food, right? And get out of
what is the
those
first thing you
patterns.
usually say to them when they say like I'm stuck? Like do you have sort of something that you're offering them to, I don't know if it's perspective or a tool or something that can maybe help them get a little unstuck?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of things that go into that aspect of getting unstuck. Absolutely. But I think really a perspective shift of that, of knowing, yes, it's valid that you're feeling the way that you're feeling because it is frustrating to be stuck in dieting and knowing that you're chasing something for a long time and never really seeing this long-term result that you were hoping for. So it makes sense that you're feeling stuck. Absolutely. That's human, right?
Yeah.
But opening your perspective to there could possibly be another way of doing this that you haven't had your mind open to yet, right? So a lot of that sense of, I guess you could call it a growth mindset of how can we unlearn, because that's really what we're doing. We're unlearning a lot of that stuff and relearning something different that's going to be more helpful and aligned with their values and goals for themselves and their well-being.
I think the interesting thing about the idea of being stuck too in a diet, because I know I've dieted 1,000 times in my life, possibly more, is that you think that if you don't fit maybe society's perfect ideal of a body, that you are supposed to be trying to get there. And that if you are not on a diet, you are like inherently doing something wrong. Like if you're not there, you should be trying to get there. And that is, I feel like, a message that's really like super common in our culture, that like if your body type isn't, you know, the ideal, then like obviously everyone is trying to do that. And if you're not, what's wrong with you? Because I know for me, like in times where I've been in a bigger or a smaller body or whatever, like it's always been like, well, the goal is to get here, so I must be doing something to make that possible.
Yeah. And so just like readjusting it's like we talk about this all the time, that bodies aren't trends.
Yeah.
And that when we really sit back and zoom out and think about there being 8 billion people in the world, why would we think that like there's one body type for 8 billion people, right? And so I think it's really important to just like sit with that. It's like, I think what happens is we get so zoomed in to like the beliefs and the structures that we're a part of, that we forget to zoom out and ask bigger questions like that. One of the things that I have curiosity about, because I'm sure this comes up with your clients and it comes up in our community a lot. So there are people who, and I don't, to be honest with you, I kind of just sit with their question and say, I don't know. So I've been kind of trying to figure out how to navigate when somebody is in our community and they go to their doctor and they're like, oh, I have significant knee pain. And the doctor's like, well, you're quote unquote overweight. And so if you lost weight, this would help. And I don't know if I buy it all the way, because I've had plenty of people here who've used our product and they actually didn't lose any weight and their knee pain is gone because they just focused on different movement patterns. And so like, how do you deal with people whose physicians are telling them to lose weight, but like, then it's like, we don't want to diet. So I'm like, I also have curiosity about the science. I feel like we take the science that's out there around healthy body weight and we don't look at all of it. We only look at the science that proves that thin bodies are the healthiest bodies. And I have so much curiosity around like the science around bigger bodies, because I'm like, how do we know that I don't know. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I'm curious, like if you have clients who are coming to you and they're getting instructions from a doctor, or they're saying you're at risk for this, or it's like, how do we dissect all that information? How do we know what's really important to focus on and not?
Yeah. No, that is an excellent question. And I can appreciate that it feels like a very confusing one, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of this like conflicting messaging going on. And you're so right that we can look at, say, research and hyper focus on one message. But the thing with research, especially with nutrition research, it's not the best, right? Like you don't know things for certain. There's not cause and effect. And I think that it's been very pinned that weight means like whatever your weight is going to cause XYZ problem, or all the problems are because of your weight. And I truly just do not think that that is true. And that also coming from a lot of research and from a different perspective, research wise, weight stigma. And the fact that people in larger bodies will just get slapped on the like, oh, you just go lose weight, is actually way more harmful than the weight itself. It is. It's super harmful. And yeah, that's a whole nother thing, whole other topic.
I feel like this is why I get stuck, because when people bring it up in our community, I'm kind of like, my answer, what I want to say is focus on something else. Like, you going on a diet is, we already know statistically that like 98 or 99% of diets don't work. So I'm not going to sit here and say that that's sound logic that your doctor's telling you to do that if we know that that's not going to work. I'm like, connect with your body in a different way. But then I also don't want to be giving, like, I'm also, you know, I'm not a medical doctor. And so I feel like these questions are complicated, but I also appreciate you highlighting the research being vague and us, you know, not really maybe knowing all that we know about the correlation between weight and someone's healthy, if they're quote unquote meeting healthy markers or not. I feel like we don't know that all the way. And I even had a woman in one of our community calls say, well, I just want to lose weight because then I can do some of these movements. And I'm like, I know people who are even bigger bodies than you who can do those movements. So it's not about your weight being, that's like a message that we have that's like the only people who can move their body in this way are people who are in smaller bodies. And I'm like, that's not true. It's just we believe that, and then we just sit back and don't try to connect with our body in that way because we're like, oh, we can't do it because our body is bigger. And it's like, but that's just a belief. That's not actually even true.
Absolutely. It's almost like blaming things on weight almost becomes like a scapegoat. Like it's like the easy, like, oh, we're just going to put the blame there because feels a lot easier than me actually like taking whatever action it is. And I definitely don't think that this is necessarily on the individual. I think it's a lot of like healthcare, weight-centric things that need to shift. Yeah, the systemic issues are much bigger and why people are feeling this way. But I think exactly like you were getting or saying there, really reflecting. And I think when this question comes up, whether it be in your community or whoever's listening to this, if you relate, questioning for yourself, like if someone's recommending dieting to me, how has that worked in the past, right? Like what does my past experience actually tell me about how that has gone for me in the past? And whenever I ask my clients that, they're like, yeah, didn't work. Like it made me feel more out of control around food. I ended up gaining more weight in the long run, and that just didn't work, right? So I think that that's something that's really important. And another thing to highlight, which I find my favorite thing to share with clients about this topic that comes up with doctors, is them advocating for themselves, but also asking this one particular question to help the doctors see a little bit differently too, because we have to remember that a lot of physicians or any healthcare providers, even in my own education, it gets very weight centric. So they're kind of focused on that. And that's maybe how they've been trained. It's shifting now, which I'm feeling hopeful about. There's a lot of shifts towards weight inclusivity in more education of upcoming healthcare providers. But we have to realize that a lot out there right now are very weight centric. So a question you can ask your healthcare provider if they're like, you need to just go lose weight, do XYZ diet to fix XYZ problem. You can ask them, okay, what would you say to someone in a smaller body if they had the same problem? What would be your
really
response?
Good, Jen.
Mind blown.
Right? Yeah. So that one will get them to be just like you guys did. Like
that's amazing.
Right?
I feel like that's what you're saying, right? It is like that's what we're talking about is anytime somebody comes back with blood work or anything that's like, oh, we need to pay attention to this, if they're just looking at someone and they're in a bigger body, like, oh, it's your weight. Yeah. It's like, that's not fair.
It's a full discrimination bias.
Yeah. There are so many people in smaller bodies who could have even worse blood markers. It's like, how do we, I guess, it feels like to me like the science isn't all the way caught up.
That question, though, is so powerful. Like, that is a tool that was not in my tool belt previously. And, like, anyone who's listening, like, write that down because I would never have thought to ask that. Ever.
And I also wonder if they could even have a follow-up question, of I've done some research and I've discovered that over 98% of diets do not work. So it sounds like going on a diet might not statistically be in my best interest. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that recommendation?
And they honestly never think about, at least my experience of physicians recommending weight loss has never been around like your mental health, like at all, because mental health is a huge part of our physical health. Like they just leave that completely out of the equation. They're like, you should lose weight because your body needs to change whatever marker that they've decided. And then they don't think about the complications of like the mental health piece, because for some people that's a really like scary place to be.
And that's why when people come here, I'm like, one of the pillars of WeShape is intention. It's like I'm really begging people to shift their intention. Like shift your intention to connecting and moving in your body. Shift your intention to getting a lot of rest at night. Shift your intention to finding joy and to connecting with friends and people who, make you feel good in your life. Like shift your intention to connection with self and then make decisions from there. If our intention is to like lose weight and track the number on the scale, you're literally signing up for a miserable existence.
And you're missing out on a lot of things. I know when I was like obsessed on those particular things, it occupied a lot of mental space for me.
100.
And my life has since expanded quite a bit, given up those practices.
Well, it was so funny because when we started doing this work, I had a scale in my house and then I got rid of it, which I'm kind of bummed because now I can't weigh my animals because I have all these giant animals. I want to know how much they weigh.
Those very large cats.
And dogs. Or a dog that's a very giant. And so I like said to Tyler the other day, I'm like, oh, let's go weigh Ziggy. I want I want a dog that's over 100 pounds. He's like, this is a weird goal. This is a weird goal.
Beethoven?
And he was like, we don't have scales. And I was like, oh, you're right. And then last night I went to a friend's house and I went in her bathroom and she had a scale. And I almost went to step on it and I paused. And I said, what is your intention right now? Why are you going to, like, I just, out of habit, it was just sitting on the floor. It wasn't like tucked away or anything. It was just there. And like out of habit, I almost went to just step on it out of curiosity. And I paused and I said, what is your intention from this? Even if you got a number you wanted, what does that mean for you? And then I just said, not stepping on it. Goodbye.
Not
I
today.
don't need to. I don't need to do it. So, but I think we're talking about something important, which is our culture has been obsessed with the number on the scale. It's been obsessed with like targeting people who do not fit a certain body type and saying you need to lose weight and that's the answer. And I think what we're all saying right now is that we don't believe that it is. We also believe there's a lot of science that's not really out there yet around, or that's not really being addressed around larger bodies. Like we automatically make an assumption that a smaller body is healthy and a larger body is unhealthy, and those are just not factual.
Yeah.
And so just giving people permission to unsubscribe from that narrative. And then I've said this before on the podcast, and I just want to reiterate, we deeply appreciate all the physicians and the doctors out there who are helping us support our medical journeys. And it's okay if somebody doesn't vibe with you. It's okay if you are showing up in self-advocacy and they're not available for that. It's okay to say, thank you for showing me your approach. That approach might work for somebody else, and I'm going to pick a physician that matches my approach and I can feel heard and seen. If you leave your doctor's office and you don't feel heard and seen, that's okay. It's time to find a new doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard sometimes to advocate for yourself, but for sure, like everything you were saying, I absolutely agree with. And I do also want to shed light that there is a lot of research done on health at every size. So if you look into health at every size, there is a lot of research backing that our health is not dependent on our size. And I think a really key message here for me, and one that I communicate to my clients often, is that, our focus on weight, right? We were just talking about how that's not so helpful, but to bring that into perspective even more, weight is not a behavior. It's not something we can do. Like our focus on that number on the scale, like we can't do weight. It's not a behavior. And like everything you were saying, movement and rest and joy and connection and building a healthy relationship with food, like all of those things are behaviors. Those are things that we can do. We can do those things. We can't do weight.
Hey there, if you're enjoying the WeShape podcast and you've heard us talk about WeShape before, then you're probably thinking to yourself, hey, what is WeShape? Well, at WeShape, we create personalized at-home workouts for every single one of our members. These are workouts where every single movement is customized to you to help you connect with your body and care for your body in a much more meaningful way. We also have a community of people there to support you, to help uplift you as you examine your beliefs, set new intentions, and again, start showing up for yourself as an act of self-care rather than trying to do your workouts as an act of self-judgment. And hey, if you're a fan of the podcast, we also do a live podcast discussion group on Zoom, as well as other Q&As, as well as free challenges for all of our members to help you get motivated to actually start taking action to caring for yourself so you can feel better in your body and about your body. So if you want to try WeShape for free for 2 full weeks, go to WeShape.com/podcast and you can get started today.
Right?
That's a perspective shift.
What I mean, it's just so funny to me that this is just like, oh my gosh, what foreign information.
I know.
Right?
Yeah. I always joke about this, and it comes up on the podcast a lot, but like intuitive eating being so not intuitive because we're not taught to listen to ourselves. Yeah. Like when I go to the doctor, I'm like, that person's the authority. They know my body better than I do. They are going to tell me how to be in this body. And that's not true. I'm the authority on my body and what feels good and what is right for me. I think that's such an important piece of the intuitive approach, is like, actually you do know what's best for you and you can tap in and you can tell. You just need to give yourself the space to do so.
And that reparenting and those messages, like the messages that we hear in our mind around you can't have that, or that's bad, or that's too much sugar, or you need to have
the food rules.
Those that is not who we are innately. Those are messages that we've been given from our culture. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like even last night when you were at my house and Macy was like, "Can I have another popsicle?" And I said, "Just check in with your body. How does your body feel?" And she was like, "My body feels like it wants another popsicle." I said, "Well, then go get another popsicle." Do you know what I mean? Like I think an older version of me would have been like, "Nope, you already had one. Too much sugar." And it's like, it just. And guess what? I think we think, especially as parents, that if we allow that, then it won't stop.
Right.
She didn't ask me for a third popsicle.
Right.
She stopped.
Yeah.
She stopped. And so it was like she listened. It's like I'd rather her have 2 popsicles or 3 or what, and just listen to her body and teach her those skills than be like, my opinion is that 2 is too many, right? I had 2 popsicles last night too. It's like we can just like let it go. We can just let it go. That's a choice too.
Yeah. That leads me into actually something that I really wanted to ask you, which is kind of a complicated question because I have like an opinion about it, but I don't know that many facts about it. And it's something that comes up a lot, which we talk about. It comes up in our community. It comes up on the podcast. But like emotional eating is like this big word that people are like, well, I'm emotionally eating. And I guess my curiosity is, because for me, sometimes I think that emotional eating can be like almost an okay part of my intuitive eating journey. Like that I am getting comfort from this food. I am enjoying myself. This is bringing me a happy experience that I really cherish and value. But it's often, I think, given a little bit of like that bad morality that we use around food rules or like this is bad, this is good. And we want to walk away from those things, I think, in our intuitive journey with eating. But I don't know. Like it still seems like it connotates as a negative to me, like emotional eating. Ooh, I don't know, like shouldn't be doing that. And I'm like, but is that always true? Like, is there a way to do that that's okay?
Yeah, it's a really good question because I love, helping people who identify as like, oh, I'm an emotional eater and that's such a bad thing.
They label
right?
themselves like, I'm an emotional eater, X mark on the spot.
Yeah, like so bad of me, right? Yeah, right. Absolutely. And I've been there myself too, and I still eat emotionally. And I think you're absolutely onto something. And I would agree with you that emotional eating absolutely is okay sometimes, right? Like we have so many different coping mechanisms that we could choose from, right? And this is where maybe emotional eating would be like, okay, yeah, you know what, that's fine and all is good and dandy. Or that's something to maybe pay attention to a little bit more and shift how we feel. Is it making you feel, after doing whatever form of emotional eating this is it making you feel better afterwards? Are you going into a shame, guilt spiral, feeling off in your body? It's bringing you down, like you're just feeling sluggish. Like, is it leading into binging, right? What are the behaviors surrounding the emotional eating and how do you feel about it? And then that would give us clues to whether that's like kind of like more of a healthy coping mechanism that we were looking at, or one that's just making us spiral and feel even worse, right? Because we know that there could be so many different coping mechanisms, and even distraction or numbing, sometimes things like that, eating, right? Sometimes that's all that's available to us if the emotions are feeling so big. And if the emotions are feeling so big that we only have those things that are like quick and easy for us to do in the moment that will make us feel just a little bit more calm or whatever that may be, then okay, that's fine. We don't need to beat ourselves up about that. But again, if it's feeling like something that's bringing us into more shame, more guilt, more off feeling, more like, ugh, then yeah, we would want to like look at that a little bit differently and make it feel like more of a positive experience and not such a negative one.
That's a great differentiation to think about. What else is this like touching and how else is this affecting my experience? Because I definitely think that food, in my experience, it's meant to be pleasurable. Like it keeps us alive. Sure. It's a survival thing. Like it's tied into our DNA to enjoy eating. We need it. And so, yeah, I think about that sometimes when I, back in my consistent dieting days where like food was not meant to be enjoyable ever. And I'm like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like it's clicking with my intuitive experience of eating. But there are times, of course, where you kind of go a little overboard and you're like, I don't feel so great. And I really probably didn't need maybe that 3rd, 4th, or 5th popsicle.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you bring up a good point, Jen, just around this is where it always comes back. And I think that I think the reason why we like diets is because diets give us control, because they give us a plan, because they make things black and white.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that the more we, are doing this podcast and working with our community and evolving here at WeShape, I think what we're discovering is that it's actually like your relationship with yourself is the most important thing, and no diet or plan or perspective outside of you. I mean, they're all pieces of information, but we all have that internal compass, that internal wisdom, and that relationship with self as we reach for that, as we cultivate that, as we look for that internal validation versus that external validation. that's where the answers are. And those answers are not going to be the same for everybody. So
Right.
that's why this idea of one size fits everything in terms of fitness and nutrition and everything, it's like that to me is like the furthest point you can reach for in terms of connecting with yourself. So what I have found is that the more I reach for that part of myself, the more peace, the more contentment, the more serenity I have. And so just thinking about this idea of like this prescriptive exercise plan with this prescriptive diet, that is like way over there. And we're actually trying to get people to just slowly keep walking towards themselves, which ultimately means we're not going to be able to prescribe you a number of times. Like when people come in, like, oh, how many times a week do I work out? Like, I don't know. What do you think? They're like, can't quite digest that feedback. Yeah. Or what diet do I do? Or what's this? Or how do I be good? Or how do I that? It's like those are not questions that are bringing you closer to you. Right. And I know that going closer to you can feel out of control. It can feel scary. I didn't say sprint towards that. I said you just slowly move towards that. And over time, that slow motion towards like, I'm going to just keep reaching for my internal compass. I believe, it's a little bit of surrender. It's a little bit of trust, but step by step, it will lead us to this, okay, I'm safe. I'm okay. I don't have to reach for that diet. I don't have to reach for that prescriptive exercise plan. I can trust my experience on the inside. Takes a while, takes some time, but I believe and I also believe it's a lifelong journey. I don't think that shit happens overnight. So
does anything.
Yeah.
I think you bring up such a good point though about the one size fits all approach. I think that we're so in this social media age where like, I might have a couple years ago seen a woman on the internet who had a body type I, of course, we all have our own preferences, think is the best one. And then I'm like, what if I eat and do exactly what she does? Will I look like that? And I think that we're sold the idea that, yes, we will. And I'm probably taller than her or whatever. It doesn't matter what's different about me and her. But like this idea that if I did the exact same thing as someone else, I would have the exact same result is actually like pretty much the definition of madness because it's not possible.
No.
And I think it brings full circle to what Jenn was saying when she opened, which is, okay, so let's say you get there.
Yeah.
Then what?
Right.
I promise you that is not going to be fulfilling and peaceful, and it's going to be still doesn't feel good enough, I still don't feel right. I didn't think it's never what we think it's going to be. And that's the entire reason we started WeShape is because we watched thousands of people in our old company strive and reach and try so hard, and some of them would get there and they would still be unhappy. And I was like, this is not the answer. We gotta shift here.
Yeah,
we gotta shift.
It's so true. And there's another piece as well that comes up for me when I think about the times in my life where I dieted and was arguably successful at it. It's a free fall while you're like not eating enough, super restrictive behaviors, which for me, the more I restrict something, the more I think about it, and then the more that I want to have it. Like it occupies a bigger place in my brain than if I just have no real feelings around it either way. It's like you might get there and then to try to find balance after that when you've been spending maybe a year like having celery sticks as a snack, you're like, what do I do now? There's not really a lot of good information in my opinion around like how to come out of that kind of steep nosedive. We're taught to diet excessively, do it this way, have a really limited calorie intake, and then it's like, good luck. Carry on with your life. And you're like, but I only know one or the other. I don't really know how to do this in between thing. And that's where I think intuitive eating has like such a beautiful place, is that it's not asking you to do this like massive calorie reduction or addition. It's just like how to feel free, how to enjoy food, how to like love yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And that's like exactly how I would sum it up as well. And even like putting it into maybe a visual for video purposes. The all of the external things, right? Like just a simple like external is all out here. That's like the scale, the meal plans, the calories, the macros, blah 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 blah, whatever plans, diets, etc. That's all out here. And your inner wisdom's in here. And we're like coming from this outer layer towards our inner wisdom. But what this outer layer does is it puts these like shells on top of our inner wisdom, and we have to peel those back. right? We have to do the unlearning, like I said, like unlearning these things to come back to that inner wisdom. And that takes time. It's totally not an overnight thing. And I think that's where that like this can get frustrating. This intuitive eating work can get frustrating because we are so used to this prescriptive, do this, do exactly this, and you will get exactly this. That's just not how life works. And as humans, you want that. You want all the answers. But if the answers aren't handed to you, it's harder. It's harder to come and listen to yourself.
Totally.
Right? We're not used to listening to ourselves. And I think this comes to an idea I like to tell my clients in terms of really the like neuroplasticity of this work and how our brains change as we're doing it. So if you think about like on one hand, being really steeped in diets and diet culture and focused on that and eating celery sticks for snacks, right? Whatever this is, we're focused really on that. And we want to get to this place of more peace, like the food freedom, like I've described, right? Where we don't feel that obsessed, stressed, wild way about food. We just feel calm. We feel like we can be around food and it's chill. To get from there to there, right, it's going to take some work because we have these things in our brains called neural pathways. And those neural pathways is like the behaviors that we're doing are built through those neural pathways in our brain. So you could think of the neural pathway like a easy route for the behavior to happen. So you have your around food, you got to obsess about it. You got to stress about it. You have to do it clean. You'd have to do it all these ways that your neural pathways in your brain have learned for you to go down. So you think of food, you think of, oh, gotta be good, gotta eat right, gotta do all these shoulds, gotta follow these rules that are in your beliefs. And that, like diet culture neural pathway, if you will, is a well-walked one. It's like a paved highway. It's just whoop, zip, you go down it like super fast.
It's ingrained.
Right? It's super ingrained. And then when we're learning to do something different, like intuitive eating, it's like we're walking through the weeds. We're like in over our heads and we're like, help, I don't know the direction.
Yeah.
Right? It's
You're on a
new.
hike, you have a compass. Good luck.
You're like, I can't see, right? I don't know the path forward. Our brains just aren't familiar with it yet. And our brains really like to resist change. So we need to challenge those like deep-rooted beliefs in diet culture land and then rewrite them with these new, more helpful neural pathways. But it's going to take you walking through the weeds, stamping down that new path, continuing to go down it and practice and repetition to get to a place of it feeling more intuitive. That's like how you said, intuitive eating does not feel intuitive, but it doesn't because we're not used to it, right? When we do get used to it, and I can say from my own experience of being someone who's been there and now I'm teaching this stuff, it does start to feel more intuitive. The more you practice, the more you embody all of these things and just have this beautiful dynamic interplay with your body and what it's trying to communicate to you through different skills and tools, of course, we can use to get there. But you can think of it like that way, like this diet culture focus that I'm like, focus on weight, focus on these strict rules, blah, blah, blah. So that's a highway. This new food freedom thing is the weeds. And we need to like find our way through them to make that a new highway. Right.
And the beautiful thing about that analogy, which I love so much, is that, you know, we're all on this highway together. But the beautiful thing about when you go on a trail and you've been on a walk recently or a hike, hopefully you've been able to get outside, like you see a trail someone's gone down a couple times. It's still pretty grassy and you're like, I don't know if I should go that way. But then as time goes on and people keep walking that path, it gets darker and darker and more stamped into the ground. And you know, hey, a lot of people have gone that direction. Like this is safe. So it's not only happening in your own brain as you practice this, it's happening around you as well. Like I know when I have a tough, you know, intuitive eating journey experience, I'm like, well, Katie's right there with me and we're doing this together. And like, we have this ability to check in with one another and say like, is this feeling right? Am I doing good?
And I love it because we call each other out on it too.
You're like, that's kind of BS, girl.
Yeah.
And you're like, my bad. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. And like, I don't know, I always use a different analogy, but like the higher you hold your lantern, the more people can see it. And I really do have hope that like there is a time and a place where we won't be on that super highway of diet culture where it's like, these are all of the important metrics to success. And if you don't have these, you're not winning at life. Like, get on that little dirt path, guys.
I
like,
love it.
we can do this.
It's usually more beautiful on that little dirt path too,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Well, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you, Jenn, and just to get, continued perspective on this journey because I know so many of us, Nina and I too, have struggled with this. And to know that there's another option, I think is an incredible opportunity to just give people this permission. So before we let you go, though, I'd love for you to share with us where people can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been my pleasure to talk about this. I could talk about this stuff all day. And I do think the more often we have these conversations, the more it's expanding and giving people space to step into this and not be stuck on that diet culture roller coaster that we don't feel good on. Right. So yeah, if anyone's listening, know that you can do it. I think that's something that I commonly hear too, is like, oh, other people can do it, but not me. No, you can do this too. So don't lose hope and don't stop trying. So if you want to connect with me, I am on Instagram at The Intuitive Nutritionist, and that is also my website. You can head to my website. I have a free quiz all about binge eating and how to overcome binge eating. So that is linked on my website to theintuitivenutritionist.com/quiz. And then I also have a podcast. If you enjoy podcasts, you enjoy listening to this, you can listen to my podcast. It's called Intuitively You.
I love that. That's so wonderful. Well, thank you so much again, Jenn. And if you need to get in touch with us, you can always reach us at podcast@weshape.com. And we will see you all next week. Thanks again.
Thank you.